is Daily Blast Live. We're talking about what you're talking about.
You all ready for this?
This is a sham.
No.
Nope.
Y'all, just stop.
Get real.
DBL, can y'all hear me? My mic's
Yeah.
on? Okay, we'll get it situated. Hold on. It's been a day and a half, y'all. I got my shots yesterday, COVID and flu. Thank you, science.
How you feeling?
So just bear with me if I'm a little less Tory than Tory, which I'm sure people want. Okay, there's some new details, and we got to get serious here about the attack on the House Speaker, of course, Nancy Pelosi. This is Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, and court filings have revealed that the man who broke into the Pelosi's home in San Francisco was, quote, on a suicide mission. He had plans also to target other politicians. Prosecutors say he was armed with a hammer, zip ties, tape, and rope, and he wanted to kidnap Nancy and, get this, break her kneecaps. Let's take that in. There are also some other details coming out, so let's take a listen.
A voice wakes him up and says, "Are you Paul Pelosi?" It's 2 o'clock in the morning. He says, "Yeah." He says, "Where is Nancy?" He said, "She's not here. She's in Washington." He's groggy out of a dead sleep. And when he says, "Well, I'm going to tie you up and we're going to wait for her," it is clear to him something is very wrong. He gets out of bed and he heads for the elevator. And Mr. DePape blocks his path. The police put their flashlight through the door and they see the two men standing there with the hammer. And the officer says, "What's going on here?" And Paul Pelosi lets go of the hammer and then he's struck.
So we're also learning that the break-in was caught on camera. Get this, the Capitol Police, though, which has a feed at the Pelosi house, were not monitoring the feed at the time. Remember, she's third in line to the presidency, so they have these feeds. Nobody was watching. Thank God the police got there in time. What do you think of these new details? Erica, what's that face?
It's like they're monitoring, but no one was watching.
No one.
It's either you about to lose your job or that was the job.
Right.
To ignore the monitor.
Right. The only job.
Right. Like, or it was the job to ignore it.
Right.
Like, it's one of two things. Like, you either lose your job or you completed the job that you were supposed to be there to do. Because that makes no sense to me at all. And for people who are making a mockery out of this, like, has your home ever been broken into? Because I will tell you for a fact, if your home has ever been broken into or you have been scared in that way, that is not something to joke about at all.
Yeah.
Like, it's not something to make light of. And people are really weird with energy because people put a whole lot of things out there that they do not want to come back on them.
That's true. What do you feel about this? And knowing that he wanted to break her kneecaps, brought zip ties?
That's why I said I agree with Erica. I think laughing at the Speaker of the House attempted murder is what we should look at this as. Right now, it's a local case, but I think it should also be a federal case. I also think the problem of security for a lot of these Congress people has been an ongoing issue. So some people on the campaign trail currently are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in money that's been raised in their own money to protect themselves.
Right.
Because we remember in 2011 when Gabby Giffords was shot on the campaign trail, that was like an anomaly. Everybody was so put off. Now it's not that far reaching to think about this. And there's been studies, New York Times have covered this heavily since President Trump got in office, that the number of violent acts or attempted violent acts towards Congress people has been very problematic and on the rise. I mean, I think there were almost 2,000. I think the number's like 1,800 something in the first quarter of 2022, and that's like the latest data we have. So I'm sure moving into election day, it's becoming a bigger issue.
Wow. And I do want to say, just so you know, he has his old boss, this is Mr., I don't want to say his name, the attacker, did become somewhat radicalized, is according to his boss.
Somewhat?
Yeah, QAnon, right-wing, Pizzagate, the election was stolen. So that's the background and the context before I get to this story, because some folks on the right have been pushing false conspiracy theories, and as Erica and Lindsay pointed to, they were joking about the attack. So Elon Musk posted and then deleted a tweet that included a link to a false homophobic story suggesting the attacker was a male prostitute and the attack was a tryst gone wrong. Donald Trump Jr., I am not kidding when I show you this, retweeted this picture, a suggestion for a Paul Pelosi Halloween costume, including tidy whities and a hammer. That's Donald Trump Jr. Check out what Arizona candidate Kari Lake had to say about this on the campaign trail.
Nancy Pelosi, well, she's got protection when she's in D.C. Apparently her house doesn't have a lot of protection. But...
Okay, so what do we think of these conspiracy theories? Do we think it's what's creating the violence towards the Congress people? Is there another answer out there, or do you think it's the conspiracy theories saying, go get them?
I think that people are outside of their minds and they're willing to go to extreme measures in order to either be a hero or feel like there's this heightened sense of importance. And by people not shutting down this, exactly where it's starting, to let people know that there is no room for this, this will not be tolerated, this is not only egregious, it's very illegal, is emboldening those people.
I agree with you on that. What do you think about the response from both sides? Should be unambiguously, this is wrong, period. I want to hear that from the Republican side. I want to hear that from the Democrat side. When Stephen Scalise got shot, Nancy Pelosi said, this is an attack on all of us. So I am not hearing what I want to be hearing, and I think you're right. That does embolden. Lindsay, what's your response?
Yeah, I think it's a bigger issue. You know, I think when you have Carrie Lake, who she's a journalist. She's been a journalist for decades. You understand what's right and what's wrong, right? And so I think just having the moral fiber to say the election was not stolen a couple years ago, I don't have a problem with the journalists looking into the election. Fair. And people on both sides of the aisle have done that in the past. But at some point, you have to concede and not let your political aspirations determine where your morals are going to lie. And so I think by doing this and being smart enough to know better, that's really the problem why candidates like her are unfit for office. And another issue is that when there were a lot of Democrats in the primaries and Republicans in the primaries, Democrat organizations that were, aligned with Democrats were funding MAGA candidates. We talked about that story. And so here's what you get when you fund candidates like Carrie Lake, who support MAGA, when there were people that Pence was running behind trying to support that were more moderate Republicans that would be legitimate, what we've all been asking for, like a moderate Democrat, a moderate Republican running against each other. We can actually debate issues. Right. We can actually debate topics. And it's frustrating to me that we're debating the 2020 election still. And lies like that are frustrating and infuriating people to a level where they're at Nancy Pelosi's house trying to kill her.
I agree.
And everyone should be saying the same thing.
Agreed, unambiguously. And may I just say, this will get worse. I don't like doing that and panicking anyone. But if we do not put the lies as lies and speak, as Lindsay said, on the same level of reality, this will get worse. And our democracy, which is transfer of power and safety for our political figures, will become dictatorship. That's called a banana republic. That's shooting the opposition. We don't want that. We don't want that. Let us know what you think on YouTube as well as our app. We want to hear from you on this. Coming up on DBL, our interview with the Judge Mathis, how he's celebrating his 24th season on TV. And we're hearing from Christina Applegate. She's opening up about her struggles from MS, from weight gain to filming the final season of Dead to Me after she was diagnosed. Stay tuned. It's a great story.
There's going to be a lot of internet chatter. That's where the red flag goes up.
We are never going to agree on this. It's ignorant, and for me, it was just like a damn shame.
Tell me I need to do something, I'm going to do the exact opposite.
You know why I don't call in sick? Camera hog. So someone just wrote in, vote, vote, vote. Marquita Baker says it will get worse, unfortunately. And I don't want to, I hate doing this and panic people or bring it back, but I'm a history person. And we've sort of already seen this happen in places when you think about the rise of Hitler or the rise of Venezuelans or Honduran dictatorships. What they do is literally take out the opposition. They kill them. So if we're going to this direction, what scares me, Lindsay, is the vector of if we don't believe the election was done rightly and then there's violence, now it's like you didn't win, shoot the other guy. I mean, we see this in other countries. I wouldn't have expected it here.
It's really new to have a political difference where the ads even get scathing. Anybody who knows politics and history understands that people really go to certain levels where they're trying to, if they want to get somebody out of office, then they'll say certain things. But we should never see violence. We should never see lies. It should all be maybe pulling up things about their history. And politics sometimes is a dirty game, but I think lines can't be crossed at a certain level. Everyone has to stand up and say, it doesn't matter who wins this race. We need to say this is not right. And so, I think it's just unfortunate. It's really frustrating that we're here in 2022. It's actually sad.
I looked in the camera and I go,
1 minute and gold.
yeah. Isn't that funny?
Yep.
Everyone's having a day today, aren't we? Are y'all having a day at home?
No, I'm having a great day.
Kelly's having a good day. I'm having a day.
I'm having a great day too.
Really?
Yeah, I'm in a good mood. Things are good. Hi everybody.
Destiny and I,
Mom and Dad,
we're
if you're
having a
watching.
day.
It's beautiful.
She's having another kind of a day.
We slept through the night. I had enough time to write some notes.
Wow, big day,
This is like old school Lindsay.
So Lindsay, you had a good night?
Bye, guys.
Oh, wow. This side of the table. Welcome back. I'm really excited to get to this story. Christina Applegate is opening up about living with MS and how hard it's been to finish the final season of her Netflix show, Dead to Me. In an interview with the New York Times, Christina said, quote, "This is the first time anyone's going to see me the way I am. I put on 40 pounds. I can't walk without a cane, and I want people to know that I am very aware of all of that." She also talked about taking some time off from filming the series after her diagnosis last summer. She said, quote, "There was this sense of, well, let's get her some medicine so she can get better," but said, quote, "There is no better, but it was good for me. I needed to process my loss of my life, my loss of that part of me, so I needed that time." She said finishing the series was the hardest thing she has ever done. She also said this about living with MS, quote, "I'm never, ever going to accept this. I'm pissed." I have a particularly interesting take only because I grew up with a mother. MS, just so you know, is an inflammatory autoimmune disorder, and it affects all parts of your body. So she started to feel on set, she would stumble, she would be off balance, she felt numbing, some tingling, and that's when she went and finally got the diagnosis. But what do you guys think about her response? Were you surprised at that anger?
Well, I think you should share what your point of view is because I thought it was a unique perspective.
That's nice of you. I appreciate that. My mom has Gaucher's disease, a genetic enzyme metabolic deficiency disorder. It affects every part of her. And my sister and I handled it two different ways. When my mom gets sick, which is constant, and it's still happening to this day, Katie, my sister, would take it in, and I would get pissed. I would get angry. And I finally saw a therapist because I believe in that, and the therapist said, "Your anger saved you." So sometimes when you're fighting these things, you need a little fire. You need a little anger to say, no, this ain't me, this is not me, and I will fight this. My body is more important. And so I understood that flame of, I'm not gonna just say, yeah, I'm an MS patient. No, I'm Christina Applegate fighting MS. And you need a little bit of that fire. What do you think, Linz?
I think, you have to let people go through their feelings. I was having a lot of conversations about this recently because surrounding me, there's a lot of people that are going through unexpected health things.
Oh, yeah.
And so I've been having some conversations about how do you feel? How can I be there for you? What can I do to just listen? And I know that people, you never know, like without you calling and checking on people or seeing how people are doing, like with her, she doesn't need you to let you know that she gained 40 pounds. Like
She's
that
aware.
would not be a good friend. People will be like, oh, you did this. What have you been doing? Like that person actually just needs you to call and see if she's okay. And she might have told you, hey, I have MS. I didn't really share this with anybody. And so I think that that's really important to just like, as somebody who's adjacent to a lot of people that are dealing with different things in their lives, is just figure out how I can be better support. And even listening to your story about your mom, how I can help, in any way or help spread the word about how this even happens. And so there's so much that I've been learning over the last few months, just as I think about trying to be a good friend to my friends that are going through things, because life be life in, and there's just like a lot of crap happening. And so I'm just that's my perspective on it.
I feel that, and just so you guys know, MS does come, there's a 32% increase if you have mono, which affects usually younger women. There's a 32-fold increase of then getting MS later in life. So the most prevalent are young and middle-aged women. Men can get it too, but I wanted to give you a heads up. Let us know if you're going through something or you're a caregiver. Did anger help you? Because surprisingly, it saved me. Coming up on DBL, make sure to keep tuning in because we're revealing word of the day. What do we think it is? Flip-flops. You need to find this word for a chance to win a luxury vacation. And we talk with Judge Mathis about having one of the most popular courtroom shows on television.
PayPal is one of the most popular online payment methods, but some users threatened to leave the service recently after they claimed the company will fine people for spreading misinformation. The allegation prompted the hashtag boycott PayPal. So let's verify. Did PayPal reinstate a $2,500 fine for spreading misinformation? Our sources are the digital archive tool, the Wayback Machine, and PayPal. PayPal doesn't fine users. Its terms of service allow the company to take up to $2,500 from merchant accounts to settle disputes with customers. In early October, PayPal posted a document that added spreading misinformation as a policy violation that would allow customers to win disputes. PayPal quickly removed the document after it went viral and issued a statement saying it never intended to post that policy. However, weeks later, #BoycottPayPal went viral again. This time, the post claimed that PayPal reinstated a misinformation fine after the criticism died down. But the proof people are citing? It's actually nothing new. Verify used the Internet Archive tool, the Wayback Machine, to confirm PayPal's user agreement has prohibited providing misleading information since at least 2015 and allowed the company to take money in damages from merchant accounts for violating that policy. So, no, PayPal did not reinstate a $2,500 fine for spreading misinformation. Other payment companies like Square and its subsidiary Cash App also have similar policies that prohibit misleading or deceptive activity. With your Verify, I'm Brandon Lewis.
If I got on the spaceship and flew up to the moon, she'll be on a rocket right behind. Okay, you notice her last name Hart, right?
Yeah.
We ain't married.
Change my name.
Your Honor, she went and changed her last name to Hart. You get what I'm saying? That's when I knew something was wrong.
Even the people in the back were like, oh no. Welcome back to DBL. He lays down the law in his long-running hit courtroom TV show, and now he's ruling his family in their new docuseries. Earlier, we caught up with Judge Greg Mathis to talk about his 24 years on television. Take a look. Judge Mathis. Yes. Hello, Your Honor. I've been waiting to talk to you about this. I have a lot of questions, but first up, really important, you have spoken out about Kanye's controversial statements. We've talked about it on the show. He's currently losing billions. He's getting major backlash. But I'm interested in your take on the legal issue, especially the George Floyd family suing him for defamation for claiming that George Floyd died of a fentanyl overdose for $250 million. What do you feel about that?
Well, I think that they'll probably be successful because it's been determined legally that he died of strangulation. And I think with regard to the companies that are divesting and their contracts with him, I think they have that right based on the morals clause that all contracts typically have now with talent. So I think he's in a lot of trouble, or he's going to lose a lot of money, put it that way. But that doesn't seem to be his motivation, and so there are other avenues. He apologized to the Jewish community for any that he may harm. Now we're just waiting on him to apologize to the black community.
Yes, sir.
Might be a while.
Might be a minute, yeah. Judge, I got to say, I love that jacket. Kissing up to a judge is never a bad thing, but I do like that shade of color. Congratulations on your 24th season. Why do you think the show has lasted so long? Because 24 seasons, that takes something special.
People watch television for escape. They don't watch television. They could go to their local courthouse and sit up there and watch some boring judge. They come to have fun with me, and the viewers watch because it's fun and informative.
Judge, you have to give me a second to stretch my legs here because I need to say this to you. This past Saturday, I was in Chicago performing. I was talking to my best friend in Miami, and before we knew we were interviewing you, he said, "Who's the realest dude in television?" And I said, "Judge Mathis." And you need to understand how much of an impact you've had on the community and how much we see you and we appreciate you, brother. And it leads right into this question. Cool. Honestly, man, you are a real one. One of your court cases inspired you to send a young man to college. How did you personally relate to this case and this human being? And can you give us an update on this young man?
Yes, what occurred, as some might know, he came to my show. A young man had escaped the streets of Compton. His mother and father died of HIV/AIDS based on intravenous heroin use. He went and lived with his aunt, San Francisco, Oakland area, and uncle or his aunt's husband was very abusive, and in court admitted to throwing the young man's clothes out because he came in at 12. And I said, you should be mentoring this young man based on his circumstances. He's your nephew. He said, no, he's nothing to me. And I don't want to see anything other than him to go to jail.
Wow.
And so I had an immediate reaction that kind of lambasted him, but it touched me. It was probably the most emotional case I've had in 24 years.
Wow.
And I told the young man that if he wanted to go to community college, we send him. And he came back 2 years later with his associate's degree and is the minister of the youth division of his church.
Wow,
Yes,
incredible.
yes.
I mean, you walk the walk. We only have about 30 seconds left, but this is super important. Your son recently came out on your show, Mathis Family Matters. Was that a difficult moment for you as a father? And what do you hope to communicate to the audience?
Yes, you know, many misinterpreted that scene because he had come out to us as a teenager. What he was telling me is that he had not allowed his friends and colleagues to know, and that troubled me. And I asked why. He said because it was to protect my career. And so it suggested to me he denied himself for his dad, and that was very troubling. And I will continue always to be a member of the LGBTQ supported and advocates because I don't want any other child to experience that.
Wow.
You really said,
What a good
listen, we need more of you. We 1,000% do. Thank you so much, Judge Mathis. As always, DBL Nation, you can watch new episodes of Judge Mathis weekdays. Check your local listings for when and where to tune in. We'll be right back.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We looked at the laws in all 50 states, plus here in D.C., and found a majority of the country actually requires employers to give employees time off to vote on election days. The states that are here on this map in green. That includes paid and unpaid time off. And if you check the fine print, some states require giving advance notice or may allow an employer to designate specific voting time, or might not have to offer it if an employee has hours before or after their shift when the polls are open. Let's zoom in on the DMV. In D.C., District Code requires employers give up to 2 hours paid leave to vote, even if it's not an election in D.C. It cannot count against the employee's PTO. The law does allow an employer to request notice of that leave in advance and designate specific time when the employee can go vote. That could include during early voting days. In Maryland, the law requires employees who claim to be a registered voter up to 2 hours paid time off on election day to cast their ballot. That's if they don't have 2 hours time off already while the polls are open. Voters do need to be able to prove to their boss that they use that time to go vote with a form from the state election board. And finally, to the Commonwealth, Virginia has no law requiring employers give time off to vote. Election Day is not a federal holiday, though lawmakers in the past have tried to change that with a few different proposals. How about federal employees? According to the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, federal employees can get up to 4 hours administrative leave to vote, as well as up to 4 hours of leave to work as poll workers or election observers. This can be on Election Day or in the early voting period leading up to it. With your Verify, I'm Abby Larico.
Let's be honest, we've all guessed a time or two about how heavy something is before putting it in the mail and hoped it wouldn't come back for having insufficient postage. But you probably wouldn't want to take a chance with your ballot. Some people are worried about how much postage to use, if it's needed at all, and what happens if they guess wrong. So let's verify. Will the Postal Service deliver ballots if they don't have enough postage? Our sources are the U.S. Postal Service and the National Conference of State Legislatures. In 19 states and D.C., no postage is required to mail in a ballot. If you live elsewhere, it depends on your election officials, and you may be responsible for the postage. Many ballots need just a single first-class stamp, but if there's a lot on the ballot making it extra bulky, then you'll likely need a second stamp if it weighs more than an ounce. But it's not the end of the world if you miscalculate the postage your ballot needs. The USPS says they'll still deliver it because ballots get special handling over regular mail. So, yes, the Postal Service will deliver ballots if they don't have enough postage. But election officials and your tax dollars might foot the bill for the missing stamps. And if you really don't want to pay for postage, many places have drop boxes that you can use for free. With your Verify, I'm Brandon Lewis.
Are you skeptical of headlines and what you see on social media? We are too. The Verify newsletter answers your questions, clarifies what's true and false, and even includes a daily fun fact. Go to verifythis.com/email to check it out.
Welcome back to DBL. We are very excited to kick off the sandals trip giveaway to beautiful Curacao. So everybody, let's get ready to reveal the word of the day.
What is it?
Today's sandals word of the day is
island.
Good one, Erica. She does it so sexy. Go to dailyblastlive.com/sandals to enter the word of the day that you just heard right now. Don't forget to watch every day for more chances to win the trip of a lifetime. Now, before we go, we do have to get into the movement that you've been doing lately. Chances are you're not moving around as much as you should, but we've got some easy ways to get in a few more steps. It's time for some joint and muscle support brought to you by Omega XL. First, take the stairs. It's one of the easiest ways to add in more steps to increase your heart rate and build strength. Next, park further away when you shop. These extra few minutes of walking time is going to start adding up. Lastly, if you are like me and you sit at a desk all day, consider standing or swapping out that office chair for an exercise ball. Omega XL has improved the lives of millions of consumers, supported by 30 years of clinical research. Omega XL's powerful and proven benefits have transformed the lives of athletes, celebrities, and dedicated daily users. So go ahead and call 1-800-686-5325 or visit omegaxl.com for more information. Island, good word of the day.
Hey,
I
thought of it myself.
Did you?
No.
You did it. You didn't
I
come.
did not.
Did you do all the words?
Maybe.
Ooh, get ready. Y'all put in that word. DBL is new every day. We will see you same time, same place tomorrow. Be good to yourselves.